I would write lyrics down to my favorite songs, just kind of live those people's songs and stories. And then I think that helped me be able to tell my own. But it takes a vulnerability. And I think that's when I really started connecting with my soul.
Hey, what's up, y'all? It's Michael Franti here, and welcome to this week's edition of the Stay Human podcast. I'm super excited today to welcome our next guest on behalf of Pact, which is an incredible clothing company that from the seed all the way to the way that you wear it and the way that you look and you feel in it is done the best way possible, the most organic fibers, the best labor practices, the best supply chain, all the way to when you wear their great styles, which is the thing that I like about it most, because sometimes organic clothes can, well, frankly, look a little bit organic. So they made great styles, and go check them out at wearpact.com. Our guest was raised on a farm in Lawrence, Kansas, and has established herself as one of Nashville's most nuanced voices, chasing down critical acclaim, not only as a solo artist, but also as an in-demand songwriter for Little Big Town, Lori McKenna, Lady A's Charles Kelley, and many others. Her unique approach to melody and storytelling has resulted in partnerships with publishing companies like SonyATV, Tree, and BMG, Nashville. And meanwhile, her live performances have earned her gigs with Eric Church, Miranda Lambert, and other country trailblazers who, like herself, create a modern sound without chasing after modern trends. So please welcome to the podcast, Ashley Ray. How you doing, Ashley?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. You know, I was just telling you, we came on this like crazy, swervy bus trail to get here. And I'm like a little bit out of breath. So I'm just glad to be like sitting down and talking with you. And on the bus ride up here, I was listening to your music, and your music is hauntingly beautiful. I've got to say, your voice is so magical. And I love just hearing it. Like I was listening to this morning, I spent about an hour and a half just listening to you sing with the guitar, and it's amazing. So if you've never heard Ashley's music, maybe right now, like stop the podcast for a second, go listen to her YouTube channel, and then come back to the podcast so you have a little bit of an idea of what we're talking about. I'm curious because one of the things that stands out to me that I found out as I was researching was that you grew up on a farm near Lawrence, Kansas. That's one of the first places I ever did a show outside of San Francisco.
No way.
Little club back in the day called the Outhouse.
Yes.
Do you know the Outhouse?
Is it also something else?
I've heard now that it's become a strip club or something. It definitely was not when I was there. When I was there, it was more like a grange. You know, it was just like this old kind of like concrete, I don't know, like something that they probably stored, machinery in or something for the farming. And it had like I want to say it had like one light bulb over the stage, and that was it. Yep. And a bunch of punk rock graffiti, and that was it. And I was in a punk rock band, and that's where we played out there.
Okay, that just made you so much cooler. I mean, I already think you're really cool. We were probably listening to each other at the same time this morning, but the Outhouse is really cool. Like the brick and mortar is probably like, it's just probably still the same as when you were there.
Yeah.
It's really
cool. I bet you at some point the strip club is going to die away, and it's just going to lay decrepit for 10 years. And then some kids are going to start a little skateboard punk rock club there again.
Yes. Oh man. Or like another little venue. Maybe you should do it.
Maybe I should do it. Maybe we should do it together.
I would love that. Lawrence is a really cool town. I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, I'm glad I left my hometown. I miss my people and my town. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I also came there in 1992 or 3. I had the chance to do this incredible project with William S. Burroughs. So William S. Burroughs is this incredible writer and legendary poet, beat poet, who ended up living in Lawrence, Kansas in the last years of his life. And we made this incredible album together. He was 78 at the time, and I came out there and recorded him doing his poetry. And he loved cats and he loved guns, handguns. And so I arrived, and my band happened to be on tour with U2 at the time. We were opening for U2. And so Bono came with us, and we arrived at this little hotel, and William Burroughs comes in, he's a little old man, bald, like skinny, like, and he's wearing an overcoat, and he had this bowling ball bag, and he drops it on the bed, and we're like, why did you bring a bowling ball to this little meetup that we had? And the bed bounces really hard, like there's actually a bowling ball in the bag, you know? And we're like, why did you bring your bowling ball again? And he goes, I just came back from the range and I thought I'd show you my gun collection. And he pulls out like this dirty, hairy, like one of those guns that seems like it goes on forever when it comes out of the bag. Like, how could that long gun possibly be in the bag? And he's like, I thought I'd show you this dirty, hairy 45 Magnum or whatever it was. And then he goes, oh, wait, before we're handling it, you know? And then he goes, oh, wait a minute. And he opens up the chamber. He goes, oh, there's one bullet in there. And we're like, oh. So that was my second entry into life in Lawrence, Kansas. So it is definitely an interesting place with all that and a college town to boot. So what was your life like growing up in there?
Oh man. It was, first of all, he sounds amazing. I wrote his name down. I'm going to read everything about him. So life in Lawrence was, I grew up a little bit outside of Lawrence, and we still call it in town when we say, like, do you want to go to town and get dinner or the grocery store? So all of my friends, you know, they would walk to each other's houses and hang out. Well, they all snuck out at night because they could sneak out and go to each other's houses. I had nowhere to go. There was just woods and, and fields. You
gotta sneak out and hang out with the badger or something.
Yeah. There was nowhere for me to go. If I snuck out, I was like walking to town. So it was incredible. It is what has kept me. I mean, it made me. I have no idea who I would be if my sister and I weren't outside every day and night, just barefoot. We had a lot of chores. We had a lot of animals.
So it was an actual working farm?
Sort of. It was more of like a petting zoo.
Okay.
I did have a calf that I entered into 4-H, but she became more of a pet. Okay. And we had horses. So it wasn't like a dairy farm or anything. We did farm our fields. We had 99 acres. Wow. So we had farmers come in, and every other year they would plant, you know, different crops, corn one year, soybeans another. So I just learned the importance and the wisdom of hard work. Like my parents, the house I grew up in was built in 1905. It had been in my family for years, built with just like a handsaw, hammers, by my great aunt and uncle. They were brother and sister. And so it's still in our family, and my uncle lives there now, and my sister and I still own a piece of the land. So it was everything. It still is everything to us.
And did your mom and dad earn a living through working the farm, or was that the business, or did they have other careers? Or
they had other careers. My dad was a heavy machinery operator. He operated a scraper, a backhoe, bobcat, and built half the streets in Kansas City.
He would be my son's hero. My son is all about it. He just loves construction trucks. He's almost 4. It's like his favorite thing. So like if there's any like YouTube videos of your dad operating heavy equipment, my son probably has watched them 100 times.
I love that. That's so sweet. I mean, I'm 38 and I'm still very intrigued by
what he did.
what he did. It's fascinating. Yeah. And then my mom worked for UPS from the time I was shortly before I was born, and worked the belt and the office area. And then after my sister and I were born, she started running the trucks and delivering packages.
Wow.
She's
Wow.
a petite woman, and I mean, talk about being buff and a six pack and everything. I mean, both of my parents, those are hard jobs, you know, in the heat of the summer and the cold of the winter. Like it still has to be done. So it doesn't matter if there's snow on the ground or it's 105 degrees. They were out there.
Wow. That's hardy stock you've come from, you know. And does your mom still do that, or? Mom
retired from UPS. So,
okay.
Yeah,
she missed her window, because now is the time, right? If you're going to be a UPS delivery person, you're like a biggest rock star ever right now.
I know. It's like people waiting for their packages. So she does have her stories she has incredible stories. She did a lot of the rural areas of around Lawrence, and had a goat jump in her truck, and she got halfway into town before she realized it was in there.
Oh my God. It's eating the cardboard. It was in goat heaven.
Yeah, I'm just glad that she knew what house it came from so she could take it back.
That's awesome. And what were they like? Like, what was it like growing up? You know, you had just one sister, or did you have other siblings in the house?
One sister. She's 4.5 years younger. Okay. We are so tight.
What's her name?
Kelsey.
Kelsey, okay.
Yeah, and she's incredible. She's a veterinarian technician in Lawrence. So we still, to this day, I mean, we are so incredibly close. And I don't know how people can grow up being an only child. Like, there's that connection that you have with this person, and you don't even have to say the words or explain anything. They just know.
Yeah. What was a typical day like for you and Kelsey? Like, say when you're like 8 or 9 years old, what would a day be like?
Okay. Well, if it was during school time, we would watch for the bus. We rode the bus to school. We would watch for the bus through the window, because Kansas is freezing cold in the wintertime. And we could see the bus coming down the road from the next road over, because it's Kansas and really flat. And so when we saw it, you know, we'd run out the door and go to school and ride the bus home. And we still talk about how during the winter, my dad didn't work a lot because, you know, the weather isn't quite as prime for building streets or so he was home with us a lot, and he would always have something. We had a wood stove. He would always have some rolls on the wood stove rising, or he would make, people call it venison, but we called it deer soup. So he would always have something he was an incredible cook. So we would eat dinner, and most of the time Mom would be home and we would eat dinner with her. But if she was working late, we'd eat without her and just like wrap it up, and she'd eat when she got home. And yeah, for them coming in after working an 8 to 10 hour day and being freezing cold, we would all back up to the wood stove, and you know, it was everything. It was great.
Yeah. You know, I'm curious, your storytelling ability is really powerful. You're a great storyteller, and in your music. And I'm just wondering, where did that come from? Was your family into it? Like, did you guys share stories together, or how did that come to you?
Yeah, my family, they are storytellers. They do not stop talking. And we still,
which made you a great story listener, and you could absorb all the techniques.
I'm a great listener as well. I feel like that's I'm excited that I'm a great listener. But yes, yeah, my grandfather, he's going to be 90 in October. He's one heck of a storyteller. My whole family, that's where it comes from.
Yeah. So what was the hardest thing for you as like a teenager? What was the great challenge for you?
Oh man, these are amazing questions. I think I've always just been a worrywart. I not only come from storytellers, but I come from worriers. Still working on that. But just kind of, I guess what a lot of teenagers struggle with sometimes is the unknown, and just kind of trying to find yourself. And I did know that I wanted to do music then. I knew from a very young age and was encouraged by my family from a very young age to follow my music, my love for music.
And when you were a kid, was music a big part of your house? Like, was there music on radio, or did you have, CDs or records, or what was the music or piano in the house?
We did not have any instruments until my mom and dad bought me a guitar from a pawn shop. I wanted to take lessons, but before that, I was about 11 when I started lessons. But before that, I can't remember a time where there was not music on in my house. Whether it was, I mean, my dad would put the speakers, and I'm talking the big, clunky, chunky ones.
Yeah.
He would run those, open the window, put them in the window of the screen, and be working outside, or have a little radio with one of the antennas. And it was always on, and it was records, it was the radio. And I didn't know a genre per se. It was, Bob Seger and Fleetwood Mac, Tom Petty, to the Judds, and Johnny Cash. I didn't know a genre.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking of your parents. Both were people who drove for a living, essentially, and was music a part of that for them? Like, was it part of their, you're spending a lot of time in solitude.
Wow. That is incredible. I've never even thought of that before. I don't know if mom had music in the UPS truck. If there was a radio in there, but I know my dad listened to it. That's interesting, because one of my favorite things to do is just drive and listen to music.
Yeah. What do you love about that?
The freedom of just, looking outside and being in a different place every second. And I love it when, and I don't know if there's a word for this, but maybe you have felt it too. I love when whatever song's on seems to be going with what's happening in the world.
Like the soundtrack of the movie that you're driving through. Yeah.
Totally.
Love that.
Yeah.
That's a magical feeling. I mean, it's interesting because in almost every genre of music, there is, whether it's, Snoop Dogg, or it's Bruce Springsteen, or it's, like you mentioned, Tom Petty, like so many songs about like that freedom of driving and the openness and being in, going really fast, but everything feeling like it's happening in slow motion. And for me, it's like the introspection of my life. Those are the times when I've asked myself like the big questions, like, am I going to stay in this relationship, or what am I doing? Or, could I get a better freaking car than the one that's about to break down, that I'm in? Or just those big questions of life that come up and that music pulls out of you. And I mean, there's been so many times when it's like, I'm driving and I'm having like this great elation, and I'm like, I'm by myself, but I'm dancing in the car, and I'm probably going 15 miles an hour faster than I should be. And like, oh, and then suddenly I come back to where I am. And then there's been other moments, like when I was grieving the passing of my father, that I stopped on the side of the road and I listened to The Sweetest Thing by U2. I listened to it probably 10 times in a row. And every time I heard it, it just made me bawl my eyes out. And that's how I really like kind of just grieve for my dad was like just being in my car by myself and then being able to go back to my life and share those feelings that were coming up with my family and my friends. And it's just a really powerful thing to have that kind of, solitude.
Yeah.
Do you still do that? Is it still like something that you?
Oh yeah. I have a list in my phone of just every time I hear of, so-and-so has a new album coming out, I'm like, I want to listen to the whole thing and I want to be driving when I do that. It's just, I process and take it in just so differently when in the car. And, I'm sorry about your dad. we lost my dad as well. And like you, driving and music, we still grieve him through that. Our music, our person was Bob Seger. And so we still put on, the records and it's still 15 years later, grieve him through that music.
Hey, the Stay Human podcast is all about the idea that there's no one you wouldn't love if you knew their story. Well, the same thing goes for our sponsor, Pact. I just know you're going to love this company as much as I do once you learn all about what they're doing for the planet and for humanity. Recognized as being Earth's favorite clothing company, Pact is on a mission to change the historically, quote unquote, dirty business that is the fashion industry. They source premium organic cotton, partner with safe, fair trade factories, minimize plastic use, offer green shipping, and even use 81% less water to make their clothing. And the result is comfortable, clean, everyday wear that puts people and the planet first. You can shop styles for women, men, kids, babies, even bed and bath products too at wearpact.com. Once you're there, use my code, which is STAYHUMAN, all capital letters, for 20% off your first order. Just head over to wearpact.com. That's wearpact.com. Last night I was thinking about this very thing because my father also, I had two dads. My biological father passed away last year. The father who raised me died 15 years ago. And my mom was at my show last night. And she's getting old. When people age, you start to see you go away and you don't see them for a few months and then you come back and they suddenly just look like they're just older, and that's how I felt last night when I saw my mom. She's still totally completely coherent, sharp as a tack. She'll put you in your place at 2 seconds, but she is just getting older.
Yeah.
And her body is. And so it was really great to have her at the show last night. And did your dad, does your mom today come to your shows, and what is it like for you?
Yeah, she does. That's really sweet. Where did you play and where did mom?
So I grew up in a similar town, something kind of like Lawrence, except I grew up in town, in Davis, California. It's an agricultural area, part of California. And it's a university town. So we were playing in Sacramento, which is like the big city next to Davis. And it'd be like going to Kansas City probably, although not as big as Kansas City. And my mom came to a venue there called the Crest Theater where I used to sneak in as a kid. I used to go in the back alley and we'd try to pretend like we were a roadie or so. I don't know what we're thinking. We weren't very successful at it, but we would go to concerts there. And so it was kind of a homecoming to be able to play there. And then, my mom came and she's in a wheelchair now. And so we had to, find her a spot and I was able to spend the afternoon with her and just listen to her, share stories about life and what her, life is now, what she's been doing growing up. So, and she doesn't, over the years, hasn't gone to lots of shows. She maybe one a year, usually one a year, but it's very special when she's there.
Yeah. It's so much more special when they're there. It's almost like, when they're there, you have, it's your mom.
At least one fan. At least one person's going to clap for you.
And if the people around her aren't clapping, they will be, because she will make them. Yeah, it's awesome. And Mom, for a lot of years, especially, she would travel and come see us play if we were in the Midwest. But every time that we would come home we would play the night before Thanksgiving for years and years and years downtown Lawrence. And she'd bring a meatloaf or something to sound check, because she knows we've been in the car all day and eating fast food. And then she would also have the turkey cooking, like preparing that as we got home, of course, intoxicated and and just, it's the best when your mom's at your shows. I'm so glad yours was there last night.
Yeah, thank you. What part of your life did music have a connection to your soul? And I mean, performing music. Like, at what point did you feel like, wow, this changed me? Like, I feel this connection to this. I want to tell my story through this. I want to do my own thing in this world.
I think it's when I started journaling. It was sort of a therapy for me, just something only I was very shy, and I didn't want to sing in front of anyone. And so writing things down, whether it's what I was feeling, or I would write lyrics down to my favorite songs, just kind of go through those and kind of live those people's songs and stories. And then I think that helped me be able to tell my own.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully, it took a while, and it still takes courage sometimes to, for lack of a better term, I guess, air your dirty laundry. But it takes a vulnerability. And I think that's when I really started connecting with my soul. Like, there were times when I was 6 years old, and there's a video of me singing to, again, Bob Seger. And my grandfather had a camcorder on his shoulder videoing it. But the soul connection came when the writing came.
Yeah. What were the first things you were writing about?
Oh my gosh. I just recently started. I don't know why I kept this in for so long, but and I have no connection to the story other than just hearing it when I was on the news when I was little. I would write about things on the news, like for instance, I wrote a song for Jean-Benet Ramsey. Mm-hmm. When all of that was happening, and no one.
How old were you at that time?
I can't really remember. Maybe 10, 11, somewhere around there. I'll have to look it up, but it was right when all of that was happening. And I just remember feeling for her parents, regardless of that whole story. I just remember that's how I processed what I was hearing. Yeah, and still do the same thing today with.
That's a really powerful story. I mean, for a 10-year-old to have that kind of like empathy and just a connection to someone else's hurt, and to say, wow, I want to write about this. And that's really powerful, and, I hear that today in your storytelling, that, even if it's a story that's told in the first person, that it sounds like you're really being, vulnerable and intimate in a way that's for other people to help them get through that, or to identify with those things, little things in our life that often go overlooked,
Yeah.
As you approach songwriting today, how do you do it? Do you just, is it like you sit down and go, oh, there's a blank piece of paper, what are we going to do? Or does it come from some deep, powerful thing? Or if you're writing with somebody else, how do you establish that connection to figure out where you're going to go?
Probably like with you, every time is different. Some days I'm writing, for another artist, and I'm not the artist telling the story. I'm helping them, listening to them and helping them put together what they want to say. Yeah. Other days when I'm writing for me, all of the songwriters have this running list of ideas or feelings or, things that we've learned that we want to talk about or write about. And that's how Pauline, the album, came about. Is I had not told my story, and I had been in Nashville for 15 years and had not told my full story about where I came from. I, in my 20s, kind of was chasing the commercial success, and I finally just was ready to tell my story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then that's what's so, it's encouraging to, once you have the courage to do that, you just want to do more, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And what's great about music today, is that there's a place for artists, for a long time, like you said, there was only just this one lane of like, oh, if you're going to be one of the few that's chosen to really put a bunch of money behind and get all this out there, then there's an opportunity for you to be one of those people who's making, selling millions of records for a big label. And then there was nothing else, except playing a little cafe or something. And now there's so many more voices out there, and in part because of this, we can just do a podcast here and people are going to go listen to your music and become your fans right from here, and it's a different time, and I feel like this time lends itself more. I mean, the time in general in the world lends itself more to people needing to hear voices that empathize with them and the situations that they're in life, the crises that they go through, and the optimism of knowing that there's someone else out there who shares what I feel.
Yeah.
How have you found that? Like, since putting out Pauline, how has it been for you? As you've had feedback or as you've done shows and people have connected with you in that way.
I have found it because I feel like I've always been looking for artists like that, just for me personally, that I want to hear. My grandpa, he would say, well, so-and-so, who's this? Munchkin, they're so much better than such and such on the radio. And I would say, well, I don't know why they're not on the radio. I don't know, but I just love it. I love them, and they're telling stories. And again, they don't have, I have a 15-passenger van that I drive, and they're in a van and touring. And how were they? And to me, the best music comes from that life, that's what I want to hear about is those stories. So I think that might be how I decided to just stop chasing the big, record deal and just kind of do it grassroots style and do it on my own. And I know that that's in my gut where I feel the most happy.
Yeah. That's awesome. What's your mission? like if there was one thing that you could say, like, I make music for this reason. What is it? What drives you? What do you want to bring to people? What do you want to share with the world?
Kind of everything we've been talking about today. The
Yeah.
real people's stories. I want to encourage. I love what the opening line of there wouldn't be a person that you would say it again.
There's no one that you wouldn't love if you knew their story.
That is so powerful. That makes me feel a million things. And I want to do that. That's a mission. That is music connects us, and in a world where there's not a lot of connection. I mean, there is, but I mean the real connection. That's what I want to do. Just and I want to listen to that from other people and feel that and connect through not just my music and songs and story, but theirs. Like that is inspiring and fulfills me.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the world needs it. It really does.
It really does.
People are really going through, I mean, all of us, every single one of us is going through a really challenging time right now. And with all the stuff we see in the news and the constant bombardment of social media, we feel alone a lot. And we feel less than a lot. And we see other people's lives and we're like, God, I wish I was that cool. And we see things on the news and we go, God, I wish I could do anything to help that. But what do I do? There's this feeling of helplessness. But music is one of those things that makes us feel like we're part of it again.
Yeah.
And that we do have a role in it and that we're not alone. And that's what I love about your songs. I hear that. Just like you said, that everyday story of real people doing real things and struggling with real issues,
Yeah.
I've got one final question for you that I ask every person on the show, which is, what does it mean to you to stay human? Like, what does it mean to be a human being? And then how do you hold on to your humanity?
Whew, that is a good one. To stay human. I think to stay vulnerable, to stay in the moment, to stay as real as I can. I mean, no human is perfect. So for me, I guess the biggest thing encompassing all of that is to stay in the moment, which is hard because we want to know what's going to happen. We want to plan. We want to, even show up to, this is a smaller scale, but I want to show up to a writing appointment and be ready to go and have an idea and half a song written, but that's not being a human. Being a human is, oh my gosh, I spilled an entire jug of orange juice this morning when my daughter, she was late for school, and I don't have an idea today, but let's talk and find one. And I think trying to stay in the moment of the unknowns of life and giving yourself, permission to be a human, to actually do that. That's human.
Thank you. That is a great definition. And I think your next song that you write should start with, I spilled a jug of orange juice this morning and my daughter was late to school. I think that's a great opening picture right there.
Oh my goodness. Well, the orange juice did happen.
I can totally see it.
The orange juice happened this morning, and I'm sure when school starts back up, she will be late.
It's the butterfly effect. It's just going to ripple on. Everything's going to be 10 minutes late from now on.
I know, yes.
Ashley, it's been great talking to you. How can folks keep up with what you're doing? And are you out on the road, or are you performing on a regular basis? What are you up to?
Yeah, I have some shows this fall, and you can go to ashleyray.com It's just ASHLEYRAY.com. And I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and it's me doing all of those. So if you say hi, it's going to be me saying hi back.
Not the Ashley bot.
Yeah, I'm not fancy enough to have someone helping me with responses. So yeah, I'm working on a new album we have a mutual friend. I can't believe we haven't mentioned it yet, Sean McConnell.
Oh, he's the best.
The best. And I remember him telling me about you when he was you guys were working together. He produced Pauline. He produced that whole album. And so we have another one that'll be coming out next year. And yeah, just all the social media. I'm not a big TikToker. I'm trying to learn how to TikTok. So I would start with Instagram first.
I'm with you. I'm getting there. I'm slowly getting the TikTok thing together. Ashley, thank you so much. On behalf of Pact Clothing, please go check them out at wearpact.com. We just want to say thank you for being on the show today. And it was just awesome to hear your story. And like I said, there's no one you wouldn't love if you knew their story. And I know that there's thousands of people who now love you. And if they haven't heard your music, they're excited to do that. And if they did know your music, they know a lot more about the roots of where it's come from. So keep doing all the great stuff you're doing. And thank you for being on the Stay Human podcast. Thank you.
You as well. And I'm a big fan of the heartfelt podcast. So this just fulfilled me. Thank you. And yeah, it was my pleasure.
You're welcome. Awesome.